I think if women aren't believed, the land isn't believed, right? The entire field gets disrupted. If that is the center of your universe at the moment, something that you're not being believed about, how much healing could it possibly do?
Hi, my name is Chloe Bradbury-Rutherford, and this is the Healing is Here podcast. I am so glad you're here. And today I want to have a really good talk with Rebecca Saltman. She believes our big work is to establish a future that is equally distributed, where women's voices are critical. Her purpose is to ensure an impact where all women are seen, heard, and believed. Her life's work is to see past today to the opportunities of tomorrow. Trust in a better future so hard it becomes possible. Weave vision, healing, and connection, and heal the system on every level. So Rebecca's a serial creator and has worked in dynamic and myriad ways to bring this vision to bear, including founder and president at A Footlight in the Door Productions, founder at disruptforgood.life, and most recently at Value Flow and January Blossoms. Hello, Rebecca. So good.
Hello, my friend. Makes me sound so good. I just probably should do this with you every day.
Yeah, it's a date. So
Cheers.
cheers. And there's so much more in there that obviously I haven't shared. You've done so many things. So you had in your bio there, heal the system on every level. And my first question is, what does healing mean to you?
We are brought into this world perfect and whole. Sometimes healing is hard, and sometimes healing is ease, like this moment. I think that we have the opportunity to have it either way. And some of us need it like a big 2x4 across our forehead. And some of us need it like a gentle hug from your friend. So.
And what has it meant to you, like in actuality?
In
In
healing.
your life? Yeah.
Do we have days, weeks? So I've experienced all different kinds of actual physical healing. I've been quite ill in my life in several different ways. I will not go into the weeds in any of that conversation because nobody needs that. But like literally physical, surgeries and healing, and part of my mission around women is that, I have not been seen, heard, or believed. And one of my physical situations of not being seen, heard, or believed was after I will go into the weeds about this just because I think it's pertinent. I had many female surgeries, and at the last one was a radical hysterectomy, and I had been suffering in enormous pain for many years, and the decision was made to do a hysterectomy, and there was lots and lots of shenanigans around it, and I won't go into those pieces, but I woke up from my surgery, and my surgeon and doctor was standing next to my bed crying. And I was like, am I dead? I asked her. And she said, no. And she said, I'm so sorry. I said, what? What are you sorry about? Did you take a leg? Like, what's going on? She's like, I'm just so sorry. I said, sorry about what? What? And she said, I just didn't have any idea how bad it was. And I had been seeing her for 2 years. 2 years. There was ultrasounds, there was all these things. She didn't understand how bad it was. Are you kidding me? a female doctor. And in this moment, it changed my life and it changed hers, right? I hope that she never does that again to anybody else. This is many years ago, 20 plus years ago. Like that healing can happen in that moment too, right?
Mm.
That being believed is so important to me, because nobody else should ever have to have gone through that, right? That I was in an 11 pain for years. And I wake up out of surgery, out of anesthesia, and she's sorry. What? So, but, that was healing for me in many ways. And it was healing for her. I am certain she would never do that again. And she would believe people after me.
Yeah.
Right? So healing is not always it is never a linear path, I would say.
Wow.
You know?
That is an incredible story. It reminds me of when I was in labour with my second child, and they didn't believe I was in labour. I was basically, I'd been induced, and so it was like very strong. It came on very strong. It took ages in the beginning, but then when it came on strong. And I had to lie. I had to lie to get them to check me so that I could go to the place where I was meant to actually have labour and actually get my husband to come and be with me. And I had to lie and say I wanted drugs when I didn't, because they were like, you can't be in labour if you don't want drugs. And I was like, no. And it took me ages to figure out. I had to say I want drugs so they could check me, so they could see, oh, you are actually 6 centimeters dilated and you can now go downstairs. And yeah, it's amazing to be faced with especially because the medical institution is so it's such a juggernaut. And like so often when I interacted, I felt like I wasn't believed, or I felt like I was wrong. And that was it. And that was a healing experience, because I lied. And so they had to send me downstairs. Like they figured out, oh yes, you are in labor. But it also took a toll as well, because, I wasn't being held in that moment.
And you were having a child, which is something that's been done since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
How is that possible, right? Like, I mean, with me at least, it was not a natural, it was fibroids and endometriosis, which is very common now, it's a very common period, but and how it's dealt with. But like having a baby and not being believed, that's a special brand of special.
Mm-hmm.
I would use a 4-letter word otherwise, but I don't know how PG you want your podcast.
I don't mind. We can swear a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And healing for both of us in these moments of being women, of being in a place that a doctor is standing next to my bed crying, big tears. Seriously. Or that you have to lie. Like, do we not know our own bodies at all? So many things are indigestible moments, because I think that we need to they need to be brought to the surface and addressed in all of its messiness and horror to be healed. May I tell a quick story?
Yeah, I would love that.
Cassandra was the eldest daughter of Priam, who is the king of Troy in Greek mythology. And she was the most, although her sister was Helen of Troy, obviously beautiful in Greek history and mythology, and the Trojan horse and that whole story of this time period. Cassandra was the oldest and most beautiful, and so beautiful and extraordinary that the god Apollo fell in love with her. And to court her, to entice her, he gave her the gift of being a visionary. And in this idea of being a visionary, she could see the future. And it was his gift to her in order to get her to come to bed with him, basically. And when she wouldn't go to bed with him, and she wouldn't sleep with him, he didn't take away the gift. He made sure that nobody would ever believe her. And so this is now called the Cassandra complex, and it's in medical books and psychology, where women are not believed, right? And I think if women aren't believed, the land isn't believed, right? Like, you can see the cascading of different effect. We were just talking about my the project that I'm working on, Janeira, January blossoms in Portugal, for example. And this is a regenerative forest in northern Portugal, right? Where the land is being heard and believed, right? And next door, it's monoculture, right? So the contrast, we need to actually, in order for it to, for things to heal, it needs to come to the surface and seen and heard and, you know, addressed.
Yeah.
And it's painful, and it's not, and again, not linear. The idea is that if one is a Cassandra, you can be in a female body or male body or whatever. If you're not being believed, there's something that's, you know, causing distraction in the field, because that needs to actually be brought to the surface and healed. And talking about healing is everywhere. If that is the center of your universe at the moment, something that you're not being believed about, how much healing could it possibly do? And you and I, through this past year, have been talking about things like money. There's so much distortion in the field around money, right? There's so much healing that needs to be done around money. Money is not our only currency. This time right now is much more of a currency and much more healing time than money. There's not enough money in the world that could pay for our time together.
I think it's amazing how all of these things are woven together. Like that, this is where all the impacts are. What is it that you know, a woman who is centered and grounded and what does she bring?
Well, let me reverse it and change it back to you, my love. You know, when you're centered and you're believed, what happens for you?
Yeah, I'm joyful.
Yeah.
I float. Like I draw the things up around me into coherence.
Now let me ask you something around that, right? How afraid are people of witches? And this is not witchcraft. It's our natural ability, right? Except we weren't seen, heard, and believed, so we're called witches. This ancient healing that needs to happen. You're burned at the stake. Women were burned at the stake for this, what you just did. It's our natural for being here. It's the joy for being here and choosing to be on the planet. If you're centered and you can even imagine that this is going to work, how much better is the whole world?
Just imagining
Right?
what that would be for, you know, for women to be able to be there in that
Totally.
place and together.
Yeah. And to gather with men. Like, this is not at the opposition of men. The contrary. And so people are afraid. And the fear mongering has come from money, has come from all kinds of things that causes separation. And the biggest problem that we have on this planet is separation. The truth and the science is that what I do to you, I do to myself. And so when I do something really crappy to you and it bounces back to me like a big fat boomerang, I think it's you. We are taught that it's you. And we have to heal from that. Like, separation is the biggest lie. It's the biggest lie. If we could heal from that, everything would change.
Have you got um a story or of in your own life where you've gone from being separation to feeling one with a situation, with someone?
I was living in Colorado. I've been living there for 24 years. And nothing was working. I was by myself during the pandemic. I had a lot of learning, a lot of realizations, and a lot of pain that came from all kinds of places. And again, this is healing, right? Like, I needed to understand that Colorado is no longer my place. And it's some people's, it is their place. But I realized, like, I was an overgrown weed tree almost, right? Like, so implanted, because everything that kept coming up, it never occurred to me that Colorado was the problem, right? Like, I have to work harder, or I have to do something harder, or, it's clearly me. It never occurred to me that it was the place. Does this make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So when all of a sudden, like, I was invited to come and speak in Portugal, where I now live. And I was here for 3 days, and I made the decision that I was going to move here. And 77 days later, I had sold my house in Colorado. I had moved out and bought a house in Kansas City, moved in, and rented where I'm calling from now in 77 days. So in when you know when all of a sudden there's things, the universe creates order like that, right? When there's chaos, it becomes order, like, just in an instant. 77 days. People spend years finding a house to buy and moving into it, and forget about selling a house, buying a house, moving into a house, renting in another country. And I don't know that it can happen for everybody. What I do know is that it can happen because I did it.
And so I would like to ask now, with all of that experience of what healing is and the things that you've done with your life, how is that all now informing what you're doing now, what the gifts that you're bringing into bringing to bear right now?
One of the things, as I might even be considered an elder soon, or maybe even now. I'm elder than some. Not an elder as in like a wisdom keeper quite yet. Maybe someday somebody will think that I am. There are deep wisdom keepers, and I hope to achieve such mastery in my lifetime before I leave the planet. What I want to say though, as a younger, I was very much about fighting the good fight and doing this, and what I've come to understand as I've aged is that the resistance is persistence. And this is an ancient proverb as well, that you know I can't fight against anything anymore. So what I've been in my personal healing journey as I've gotten older and in my time today is that I instead of fighting against it, and there's plenty of things to fight against or to fight for. So instead, now I'm like, what do I want to stand for is my deepest truth. I want to stand for women being seen, heard, and believed. I want to stand for regenerative land, because that is truly our relationship with each other, and the land is one, is the same. I want to stand for these things because the energy I used to use to fight for or against spent me out. Now, don't misunderstand, the protests around the world for all of the things that are happening in the world. Everybody has to do what they need to do. For me, I have to stand for something to address what I believe is injustice, as opposed to fighting in any way or resisting in any way. These things are being brought up to be brought to the surface and seen. And how we react to them is where I think our healing is. I think so many things in this world right now are, I mean, it is the extreme of the extreme of the extreme. The wars, the fight over money, the catastrophes with weather, with all of these things. We are at the most tipping point, along with our nervous systems right up here. And the only way we're going to be able to address them is when we work together and collaborate, and when we are able to together self-regulate to bring everything down. Because otherwise it's going to be conflict, constant fighting. And if your energy is pulled into the constant fighting, of course your nervous system is going to create more of that, because you're creating more resistance. And I'm not of the one that's, the kind of person that says like, I've created the war because of my, whatever, like, I'm not in that place. And I understand what I'm here to learn. I have my own frustrations. I'm like trying to figure out where the hell I'm going to be living in July. I'm trying to figure out where, whether to keep or sell my home in the US, and whether, like I have a lot of things up in the air, and those things are not grounding. So these are things that are pushing me on the place that I am most vulnerable. We are all getting pushed on those places that are most vulnerable for ourselves. And that is what we need to heal for ourselves and each other.
The vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable with
Yeah.
each other, taking off the armor.
Cheers to that.
I think what was interesting as well when I heard that, like, I felt like in so much of what you said, then it's like, oh yeah, that's what we're going through. Oh yes, that's what we're going through. And in our echo chambers, it can be easy to feel like other people are not experiencing what we are. This comes back to the truth, because people only tend to share what what is good, or what people feel like others would like to see. And this is getting more and more out of control. I feel, again, like goes back to the phones, that this sense of like who I need to be seen, heard, believed, right? Who do I need to be loved? And this vulnerability to actually admit I haven't got it together. There are all these things that are scaring the shit out of me. I don't know how to do this. I'm a bit of a mess.
Both hands up. Like,
And I feel like I feel like I should have it together. Like,
I think that's a lie, right? Like the idea that we have it together, that's a big fat lie.
Yeah.
What do I know that I know for sure is true? For me, like, is this moment, right? Like, I know this is true because it's my experience with you in this moment. Do I know that this war is happening is true? Maybe, right? Like, I have friends in different places in these war countries that I'm experiencing it. Do I know for sure it's true? I mean, this is hugely controversial. I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole necessarily, but like, and it has a massive impact on my life, right? The only thing though, for sure, I know is true is that this conversation that is happening with us right now is for sure is true for me. It's the only thing I know for sure.
And my experience, and I know that Byron Katie is the work that I've experienced, that teaches me about that ability to question what is true and how it impacts me, or what I can know to be true for sure, and what I can be told but I haven't got firsthand experience of, and what that is. I feel like the thing that it supports me to do is to understand how I go into that, like the stress response, how it affects my nervous system when I'm not actually experiencing it. And then I'm out of control. And then I'm doing things in my life that's not helping whatever the things that are going on that are scaring me that I'm not actually experiencing. And it becomes, and that's how we end up in the opposite world, the world that, the vortex that is us as women able to hold. You start undoing it and going in a degenerative opposite direction, and you can't hold anything. Yeah.
We are in a fear-mongering time. And so how are we sitting with each other and ourselves and the land, right? Put your feet on the ground, figure it out. This is, it's so, there's so much complication and so much distraction out there that we are pushed in the most absurd places to get ourselves tangled up when we should have the opportunity to just sit and have this conversation.
Is there any other things you would like to share about the gifts that you've received through creativity? Like how hang on, let me ask it a different way. How has creativity played a part in your experience of healing?
Well, I grew up in the theater. The best foundational education I can recommend for anybody, anytime, anywhere. Why? Because at 8 o'clock at night, the curtains open and the lights go on and there's a play. So it's life lessons on every dimension. The lead actress's dress is ripped, find some gaffer's tape. you know there's a prop missing. Oh, what are we going to use in substitution? There's a light out. Okay, we have to just move everything a foot to the left. That art imitates life and life imitates art is probably a deep truth that none of us have really sat in. And growing up in this deeply, I grew up in Boston Children's Theater starting at age 10. And I was stage managing in a professional children's theater company when I was that young, because they didn't know how old I was. And it was, they were training children in all of these things. And for me, like being able to watch how everything moves amongst, like how the actors watch, to this day, I really enjoy sitting up like in the balconies of theaters and watching dancers or watching musicians or watching actors and doing this, because it's you watch how people bump into each other or don't, or how they interact and they don't from here, is such an interesting thing as one is trying to navigate life. And so I think a lot of my creativity comes from that. And I'm so grateful for that education, and so grateful that my sister, who was a childhood ham, needed to be in front of every, doing poetry and singing in front of the family as a young child and whatever. And my parents had to do something with her, that ultimately they got me involved in the theater, and I was totally a wallflower, like wouldn't even like make a hair appointment for myself, because I was so nervous. And it taught me like life skills and the ability to be curious and creative, and to know that anything is possible when you have people all working in one direction. I believe it's true. And that's the that's the deepest creativity. Somebody wrote the script. Well, okay, but you can change that line. You can rewrite the script. But that person does this. Do they have to? Well, the light comes up now. Well, can we have it be the light goes down now and then it comes up later? So anything is possible. And if you really believe, and you too can move in 77 days to a foreign country. I mean, I'm not, I feel like I'm super grateful and not special, right? Like, I think that's, people call me brave and all of these things for all what I've done over the past year and a half. I would just say that I haven't been in resistance. And every time I'm in resistance, crazy shit happens. Um, so, you know,
Oh, wow. Yeah. You stop
so
the flow, right?
what's this?
You stop the flow when you're in resistance.
Yeah. Yeah. And so back to sort of basic healing, you know, illness comes from resistance too. Um, you know, fighting against whatever. And it's again that against. The one thing that has been a constant in my biggest life learning is about not against. There's no against. It's only with. It's only with. Like, I want to create the collaboration world of the, you know, of the universe. Because only then will we all be okay. It's not that it's going to be perfect and all of those things. That's not it. And if we're doing it with, how much better will it be? I mean, I want a world of with, not against.
Yeah. Creating together.
Yeah.
And we do know how to do it, but we have to practice. We have to practice. Yeah.
We do. We've forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. We've forgotten. We have forgotten. You're the best.
Thank you so much for helping us to remember today.
Thank you so much for asking me to help
Yeah.
remember and you to remember too.
Yeah. I would love you to let everybody know where that they can contact you, hear about what you're doing.
Well, um, my most of my work right now is with my companies, which one is a nonprofit and one is a for-profit. They're both called Value Flow. One is valueflow.pt and one is vfi.eco, valueflowinnovations.eco. And what the projects that we're working on are creating a world of the future where people and places and things are valued. And where we're working on our land project, January Blossoms, and other things that we can all be seen, heard, and believed and valued. And value what really matters.
Just, I know that something exciting is happening with Value Flow. With January Blossoms.
Yeah. So
Like,
we will be in the very near future, fingers, toes, and everything crossed. We've been working on the technology for a long time, and of course it takes much longer than anybody ever imagines, but we are going to be opening up the opportunity for everybody to be in co-ownership, stewardship, and guardianship of this pristine forest in northern Portugal called January Blossoms. In Portuguese, it's Janeira, which is translated to English to January Blossoms. And we are creating an entirely new way of being in relationship with the land and each other by sharing guardianship and co-ownership. So that will be all coming out on vfi.eco and valueflow.pt.
amazing. I'm so excited. I've seen pictures of it. Like Portugal is a very important place to me, and the incredible variety of plants and herbs and trees and I'm sure the wildlife there as well. It's super exciting what you're doing with that. I can't wait to visit
Thank you.
even.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca,
Well,
for
thank
joining.
you.
Yeah,
And thank you. This was very healing. I'm sure it was healing for you too.
absolutely. I much more than I could have ever expected. And and I hope for everybody who watches that there are things in there for you as well that you can take away. Yeah, lots of love.